You are a very powerful organization.
The criminal underworld is a vast, interconnected network of gangs, mafias, and outlaws, driven by a thirst for violence.
MS-13 is particularly violent. They don't like shooting people because it's too quick, it's too fast.
From the streets of Chicago to the corners of Italy, violent gangs have taken over every corner, recruiting young men to carry brazen acts of violence that shock the world.
If someone disrespects you, you have to destroy them, period.
Join us as we unveil 15 most dangerous gangs in the world, beginning in the badlands of Mexico. Number 15. Los Zetas. Meet one of Mexico's most feared cartels, the Los Zetas. The genesis of this ruthless can be traced back to the year 1997, when 31 members of an elite airborne special forces group in the Mexican army defected and switched to the path of criminality. Using the special skills they had acquired in the army, the team began working as hired assassins, bodyguards, and drug runners for the Gulf Cartel, led by Ociel Cardenas Guillen. Between 1997 and 2002, the gang was led by its original leader Arturo Guzman de Cenas, who was also known as Z1. But on November 22, 2002, de Cenas was taken out by the military after he was spotted in a restaurant in Matamoros, Tamaulipas. The group was named after him, and his legacy remains intertwined with Los Zetas' history. Following de Cenas' death, the reign of leadership fell into the hands of Heriberto Lascano, also known as El Lasca or Z3. It was El Lasca who brought the Los Zetas out from under the rulership of the Gulf Cartel, following the arrest and extradition of Cardenas, the cartel leader. Since then, the gang has established itself as a ruthless organization, with hands in various criminal activities including drug trafficking, arms dealing, and even human trafficking. Their network runs deep, stretching through Central America to Colombia, and they've even been reported to have links in Venezuela, Europe, the United States, and in some West African countries. Unlike other Mexican gangs, however, Los Zetas possess a form of sophistication and tactical ability that could be traced right back to their military roots. Their ways are also quite brutal, and they've been known to resort to brazen acts of violence and intimidation as a means of enforcing their will. Like in August 2010, when members of the Los Zetas brutally murdered 72 migrants and dumped their remains in a hole in Tamaulipas. They maintain a military-style control over territories and have established themselves as a force to be reckoned with in the Mexican underworld. Number 14. The Aryan Brotherhood. Prior to the 1960s, most prisons in the United States were segregated along racial lines, but as America moved towards desegregation, many inmates began to organize themselves into gangs. This was the birth of the Aryan Brotherhood. Many believe that this gang originated in San Quentin State Prison, and from there, their reach spread throughout the California prison system. By 1975, the Aryan Brotherhood had developed into a full-blown criminal organization, and they were involved in several race wars with other prison gangs like the La Nuestra Familia and the Black Guerrilla family. As a result of this war, the Californian prison authorities resorted to segregating each gang in a separate prison, and so the Aryan Brotherhood found themselves confined in the Chino prison. It was here that their gang began to grow and developed an organized system of leadership. But as the gang grew in number and influence, so did their ambition. By the 1990s, they shifted their attention from flimsy racial wars to organized crimes such as drug trafficking, prostitution, and targeted murders. The gang got so powerful that they were even said to hold more influence than the American Mafia. After gaining a hold on the prison system, the Aryan Brotherhood extended its reach, amassing even more followers on the outside. Today, the Aryan Brotherhood boasts of between 15,000 to 20,000 members, both within and outside prison, making them one of the biggest and most dangerous organized crime groups in the United States. Number 13. CJNG. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, also known as the CJNG or Los Zetas, is an organized crime syndicate based in Jalisco, Mexico. The group is known for their brutality, violence, and a history that dates back to August 2009. Founded by Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, also known as El Mencho, and one of the most wanted drug lords in the world, CJNG has taken criminality to a whole new level. Even the Mexican government has labeled them the most dangerous criminal organization in Mexico and the second most powerful drug cartel in the country, after the Sinaloa cartel. The gang is heavily militarized and has recorded more violence than any other criminal organization in all of Mexico. Just like the Los Zetas, CJNG also operates under a military-type system. There's even a special operations group as well as other sections dedicated to special types of warfare. According to sources, the gang also offers a hitman training program where they build their future assassins and contract killers. The CJNG is also heavily involved in the illicit drug trade and has taken a hold of a larger percentage of Mexico's underworld economy. But as we dive deeper into the dark shadows of this criminal organization, we uncover another horrifying practice. According to reports, the cartel has been noted to engage in cannibalism, feasting on the flesh of their victims, and even feeding to new cartel members during the initiation process. As the CJNG continues to take root in Mexico, the gang only grows more and more powerful, and they have been said to operate with drones during their attacks and operations. Their reach has also spread beyond Mexico, extending into Central American countries like Guatemala, Salvador, Costa Rica, and Panama. They also operate in several states across the US, as well as in Australia, South America, and Europe. Number 12. MS-13. In the dark underbelly of the criminal world, one gang stands out both for their unrestrained violence and their bloody history. This is the MS-13, also known as Mara Salvatrucha, an international criminal gang that originated in Los Angeles back in the 1980s. Over the years, they have grown to become one of the most notorious street gangs in the Western Hemisphere, with networks extending beyond the shores of the United States. Their most notable impact is felt in the Northern Triangle, which includes Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. Thanks to the activities of the MS-13 and other criminal gangs, the Northern Triangle is currently regarded as the most violent place in the world that is not at war. Although it started as a simple street gang, M13 has grown into a transactional criminal organization, with roots deep in illegal drug trade, arms dealing, human trafficking, extortion, and other illicit business activities. But that was not how it was in the beginning. Back in the 1980s, when MS-13 was first founded, the group was initiated with the goal of protecting refugees from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua, who had fled to the United States as a result of the civil wars. But soon they ventured into several criminal activities, transforming into the very demons they were supposed to fight. The MS-13 has also established its roots in prisons throughout the United States and Central America, creating an even deeper network for their activities. The MS-13 has also been involved in a violent gang war against their major rival, the 18th Street Gang. This long-term rivalry has led to the deaths of countless gang members and even some civilians who get caught in the crossfire. Number 11. Yakuza. Deep within the heart of Japan, a mafia-like criminal gang rules the land with an iron fist. They are known as the Yakuzas, and over the years, their reach has spread even to Western nations like the United States. Yakuzas are characterized by elaborate body tattoos and samurai-like rituals, and they control the largest percentage of illegal activities that go on in Japan. They engage in blackmailing, smuggling, prostitution, drug trafficking, gambling, loan sharking, and other forms of racketeering. The Yakuzas also control many legal businesses in Japan, including restaurants, bars, trucking companies, talent agencies, and even major factories. The origin of the Yakuza can be quite difficult to determine, but according to historians, the gang's genesis can be traced either to the gangs of masterless samurai known as Ronin, who became bandits, or the noble warriors who defended the people against the Ronin back in the early 17th century. Fast forward to the 1960s, and the Yakuzas had transformed into a formidable force, with over 180,000 members. However, by the turn of the 21st century, their numbers had dwindled greatly to just 80,000 members, which are divided between members and associates. But in spite of their criminal activities, Yakuzas have also been known to perform charitable acts. like in 1995, when they donated supplies to the victims of the Kobe earthquake, and in 2011, when the victims of the Japan earthquake and tsunami were blessed with relief from the gang. Over time, the Yakuzas have chosen corporate crimes over brazen acts of violence, earning them a reputation as one of the least murderous criminal groups in the world. But don't be fooled by this facade. These people are as deadly as they come. They have become a necessary evil, a virus that continues to grow with society, and even though the Japanese government continues to crack down on their activities, the roots have eaten deep, and uprooting them seems like an impossible task. Number 10. Crips. Back in the 1950s, South Central Los Angeles became afflicted with a severe problem, as several gangs began to emerge from the streets. It was just a few years after World War II, and the American economy was in serious decline. Unemployment was on the rise, and coupled with the racial segregation of African American men, it created the perfect opportunity for the birth of armed gangs. As the years went by, Central LA became saturated with gang activities, transforming into a den of outlaws and gangsters. In 1969, Stanley Tookie Williams met Raymond Lee Washington, and he shared his vision of uniting all the local gang members from the East Side to the West Side under a central command. Washington, who attended Fremont High School, took control of the East Side Crips, and Williams, who attended Washington High School, was in charge of the Crips on the West Side. The Crips are also recognized by their characteristic blue bandana and other blue accents on their clothing. They are also heavily involved in the production and distribution of illicit drugs, and their history of violence runs really deep. Crips are divided into sets, many of which are now involved in infighting within the group. Deadly shootings, drive-bys, and coordinated attacks have been a major feature of this gang, leading to the death of countless members, most of whom are teenagers. The Crips also have a long-standing beef with another gang, the Bloods. The history of these two gangs is so interconnected that it's hard to talk about one without mentioning the other. Number 9. The Bloods. The genesis of the Bloods can be traced back to the late 1960s, when a bitter rivalry emerged between the Crips and a group of high schoolers. According to the gang's history, Raymond Washington, the confounder of the Crips and leader of the West Side, launched a coordinated attack against Sylvester Scott and Benson Owens, two students at Centennial High School, Compton, California. It was a brutal attack, and in response, Scott decided to start his own gang. He called it the Peru Street Boys. On his own end, Owens also established the West Peru Gang, a rival gang formed to crush the heavy hands of the Crips. This was the first ever Bloods gang. Scott and Owens' idea was to create a gang that would protect non-Crip members from the influence of the gang and the bullying that had subtly crept into the gang's system. Prior to the creation, many non-Crip members already referred to themselves as Blood, so the name was just a no-brainer. On March 21, 1972, shortly after a major concert, 20 Crip members attacked and robbed a young boy named Robert Ballou Jr. outside the Hollywood Palladium. While struggling to keep his leather jacket, the gangsters beat Ballou to death, causing a massive uproar in the streets. The media took the story and ran with it, and this brought the Crips even more popularity than they had before. Following many other targeted attacks at non-Crip members, several gangs that had been repeatedly victimized by the Crips came together to form an alliance headed by the Pirates. Their mission was to create a force that would repel the bullying force of the Crips and stand as a competing figure for the gang. This was the birth of the Bloods. By the 1980s, the Bloods had also transformed into a drug-running organization, pulling in millions and billions every year from the illicit drug trade. Just like the Crips, the Bloods are also divided into two distinct groups, the West Coast Bloods and the United Bloods Nation, or the East Coast Bloods. Over the years, the Bloods have grown in number, wealth, and influence. They are easily distinguishable from the Crips by their signature red bandana, and they continue to don the color red as their signature color till today. Number 8. Russian Mafia. Unlike Bloods and Crips, the Russian Mafia is not a street gang, but a well-organized criminal syndicate, with roots deep in every illegal activity imaginable. The post-World War II era in Russia formed the perfect backdrop for the evolution of this criminal organization. With the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the rulership over Russia became unstable and unfit to control the affairs of the nation. So armed gangs began to emerge, exploiting the flourishing black market and building both wealth and influence through violence, backdoor deals, and even international crimes. By the time the 1990s rolled in, the Russian mafia had skyrocketed to the top of the FBI's list, and according to Louis Freeh, who served as the head of the bureau between 1993 and 2001, the mafia was the greatest threat to the United States in the mid-1990s. As of 2022, they are still regarded as the world's largest, most powerful, dangerous, and feared criminal organizations in the world. Consisting of about 6,000 groups, their activities involve human trafficking, racketeering, drug trafficking, extortion, robberies, arms dealing, high-profile murders, financial crimes, and even terrorism. The Russian mafia has also been known to manipulate governments, exert their will through force, and they've also been in several money laundering cases. With over 500,000 members spread across over 50 countries, the Russian mafia stands as a sore thumb, and every effort to uproot the gang has proved abortive. Number 7. The 18th Street Gang. Also known as Calais 18, Barrio 18, or simply 18, the 18th Street Gang is a multi-ethnic and transnational criminal organization, which started as a street gang in Los Angeles. It is currently one of the largest criminal gangs in the United States, with between 30,000 to 50,000 members, spread across the United States, Mexico, and Central America. The group also maintains a close relationship with the Mexican mafia, and are credited for turning the Central American Northern Triangle into the area with the highest homicide rate in the world. The need for a new LA gang arose in the 1960s, after Mexican Americans and other immigrants were rejected from joining the existing Hispanic gangs. After facing constant rejection from gangs like the Clanton 14, many immigrants and Mexican Americans decided to band together and create their own cliques. As they grew, the 18th Street Gang got into more gang wars with other established Hispanic gangs. These battles were deadly, and the 18th were losing men from time to time, so they decided to expand their membership to other nationalities and races. This made the 18th Gang the first multiracial, multi-ethnic gang in Los Angeles. Today, there are about 200 autonomous gangs unified under the 18th banner. Their network runs deep, and they've been implicated in every illegal activity you can imagine. Their influence even extends to the prisons, where they continue their history of oppression, intimidation, and unbridled violence. Over the years, their influence has extended beyond the shores of the United States, and currently there are 18th gangs in places like Australia, Canada, England, Germany, El Salvador, Ecuador, and Guatemala, to mention a few. Number 6. Camorra. The city of Naples became home to this deadly gang during the 19th century. Little is known of the Camorra's origin, but according to the gang's history, the movement may have originated from Spain as early as the 15th century, before being transported from there to Italy. Over the years, the Camorra had grown in brutality and influence, and their operations include numerous criminal activities such as smuggling, blackmail, extortion, armed robberies, kidnappings, and drug trafficking. Following the 1861 unification of Italy, authorities launched a massive crackdown on the gang, beginning with an intensive series of manhunts in 1882. As a result of these crackdowns, the Camorra began losing their power and influence, so they decided to put their own men in government. But in the 1901 Neapolitan election, every single candidate from the Camorra was defeated, watering down the gang's influence even more. But although they were greatly weakened, the group managed to stay alive. By the time the 1980s came by, the Camorra had dipped its hand in the lucrative trade of illicit drugs, spreading its influence beyond the shores of Italy. Their system of operations is similar to the Italian mafia, and with over 10,000 members worldwide, their impact continues to be felt throughout Italy and beyond. Our subscribers' pick for today takes us through the dark history of the Aryan Brotherhood, a neo-Nazi white supremacist gang. Their swastika tattoos and skinhead haircut set them apart from other criminal organizations, and their legacy is written in the blood of their victims. But how did they get so powerful? How did a white supremacist criminal organization take so much root in the prison system that it has now become like a cancerous growth? In spite of efforts to clean up the prison system and rid America of the menace of gang violence, the Aryan Brotherhood continues to grow bigger and stronger, smuggling, kidnapping, and taking out anyone who stands in their way. Share your thoughts about this with us in the comments. Now let's get back to the video. Number 5. The Latin Kings. Formed in Chicago back in the 1960s, the Latin Kings is a street gang composed mainly of Mexican and Puerto Rican males. The original ideology behind the group's creation was to combat the racial prejudice that many young immigrants faced. But before long, the Latin Kings soon evolved into a criminal organization. The group is divided into factions: Motherland, which is also known as King Motherland Chicago or KMC, and Bloodline, which is based in New York. The Motherland faction is made up of over 160 structured chapters, with operations in 150 cities across 31 states in the U.S. According to statistics, the gang boasts of between 20,000 to 35,000 members, making them one of Chicago's largest criminal gangs. As for the Bloodline faction, they're currently made up of between 2,200 to 7,500 members, heavily armed and motivated to propagate violence. However, the two factions operate independently, and the New York Bloodline does not report directly to Chicago. Over the years, the activities of this group have been funded by the street-level distribution of drugs, as well as strings of robberies, money laundering schemes, and financial frauds. The Latin Kings have also formed alliances with other gangs like the Bloods, the Sinaloa Cartel, and the Vice Lords. However, in the wide tapestry of the criminal system, their paths have also crossed with other gangs like the Crips, Gangster Disciples, United Blood Nation, Los Solitos, and La Raza Nation, to mention a few. These violent clashes often result in bloodshed, as each group tries to assert its dominance in the streets. With more than enough arms flowing on the streets of Chicago, the bloodshed continues as the Latin Kings continue to propagate their message using violence, domination, and intimidation. Today, they're recognized as the most violent street gang in the United States today, with countless murders and shootings credited to their activities every year. Number 4. Vice Lord Nation. In the dark and shadowy world of the Chicago underground, another gang which is known for its history of brutality and violence. The gang's roots can be traced to the year 1957, when several African-American youths originally from the North Lawndale neighborhood of Chicago banded together while incarcerated at the St. Charles Juvenile Correctional Facility. Headed by founding member Edwin Pepelo Perry, the gang quickly rose in ranks. As soon as the founding members were out of prison, they began spreading the message, recruiting young boys like themselves into the gang lifestyle, while engaging in conflicts with other established gangs and criminal groups. By 1964, less than 10 years after the group's creation, the Vice Lords had become a significant concern for law enforcement. Their members were very violent, and they engaged in several illegal activities including armed robberies, car thefts, assaults, murders, gang shootings, and extortion. But soon, they decided to clean up their image, renaming themselves as the Conservative Vice Lords. However, violence was never far from them, and although the group received positive attention at first, they soon spiraled out of control. They even did so well that they were able to clinch a grant of $275,000 from the Rockefeller Foundation in 1970, but the money was eventually used to further their illegal activities. Today, the Vice Lords have become even more sophisticated, dabbling into non-violent crimes like mortgage fraud, credit card fraud, and money laundering. According to the Department of Justice, the gang currently operates in 74 cities across 28 states, with approximately 30,000 to 35,000 members nationwide. Number 3. Andretta Mafia. The Andretta are one of Italy's oldest gangs, with a history dating back to the 18th century. Many believe the criminal organization was born from the intense persecution of the Sicilian Mafia, also known as Cosa Nostra. Over the years, the 'Ndrangheta has expanded its activities into other ventures like money laundering, extortion, human trafficking, and even rigging public contracts. Their influence runs deep, and surprisingly, some high-profile individuals have even been implicated as gang members, like the former Italian lawmaker Giancarlo Pitelli, who was sentenced to 11 years in prison back in 2023 for working as a fixer for the criminal organization. According to Interpol Secretary General Jurgen Rock, the Andretta Mafia is one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. And in 2021, Interpol even had to create a special task force to combat their activities. With roots deep in illegal arms trade and all sorts of criminal activities, the gang continues to rake in billions of dollars every single year. In 2008, the Italian research institute Eurispes estimated that the 'Ndrangheta had a turnover of 44 billion, which is about 3% of Italy's gross domestic product. According to Europol, the group also gives back to the society, investing their ill-gotten profits into struggling local businesses, although with malicious intent. Over the years, the gang's roots have spread beyond Italy, extending into countries like the United States, Canada, Latin America, and Australia. With about 10,000 members and over 60,000 affiliates around the world, the 'Ndrangheta maintains its presence as the deadliest criminal organization in all of Italy. Number 2. Hell's Angels. Back in the 1948, a group of bikers in California banded together to form an outlaw motorcycle gang they called the Hell's Angels. Since then, the gang has grown to become the most notorious biker gang in the United States. They are mostly comprised of Caucasian males who ride Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and although the organization has managed to clean up its corporate image, the culture of violence has become inseparable from their identity. The club opened new chapters in San Francisco in 1954 and then in Oakland in 1957, spreading their wings across the United States one state at a time. The low-budget biker movies of the 60s and 70s also helped to propagate the message of the Hell's Angels, spreading their influence of violence everywhere. From stabbings to shootings, and even organized crimes, the Hell's Angels have written their legacy in blood. But that's not where their activities end. They've also been found to be heavily involved in the illegal drug trade as well. Although all efforts to prosecute the club members of racketeering have always proved abortive, the FBI continues to label the organization as an outlaw motorcycle gang. Number 1. Black Disciples. Deep in the dark corners of Chicago where criminals roam free, the Black Disciples stand as one of the largest criminal gangs in the city. Formed on 1966 by a man named David Barksdale, the group has grown exponentially, recruiting young African Americans to follow a life of crime from their early ages. Their string of illegal activities includes arms dealing and trafficking, burglary, kidnapping, money laundering, illegal gambling, and all forms of racketeering. The gang also has deep roots in the Chicago hip-hop culture, with members like Chief Keef, the late King Von, and Lil Durk continually bearing the torch. What started with a group of teenagers in 1958 has become a full-blown criminal syndicate. Initially, the Black Disciples came together to combat bullies and attackers from other gangs, but they have since transformed into the very demons they were born to slay. Today, the Black Disciples are divided into over 300 sets, each consisting of between 30 to 40 members. As the authorities continue to crack down on these gangsters, their reach also becomes increasingly difficult to curtail. The gang's history has been marked by bloodshed, violence, and an untamed appetite for chaos. Today, they're recognized as one of Chicago's deadliest gangs, with body counts racking up to the skies. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.